Welcome to PharmaSource. On today's episode, Chris Kilby, co-founder of PharmaSource, sits down with Brian Whitlock, VP of Global R&D Procurement at Bristol Myers Squibb. They talk about his career, the role that procurement plays in enabling BMS to create life-saving medicines, and what that mission means to Brian personally. Over to Chris.
Today, we're going to be focusing on R&D procurement, critical part of the wider pharma development process, and therefore a hugely important focus area for procurement and sourcing execs. Delighted to be talking to Brian Whitlock, Vice President, Head of Global Procurement R&D at Bristol Myers Squibb. Brian, a very, very warm welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. As you said, I've got over a 20-year career in the life sciences industry, predominantly on the R&D side. I got my education, my undergraduate degree in chemistry with a concentration in biochemistry. And when I was in school, very early in my schooling, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Very interested in how the body works, science. And learned very quickly because broken bones and blood don't sit very well with me. I decided I needed to move more on the away from the medical field. So I started working at Covance. Got really good experience working in a genetic and molecular toxicology group, just to understand what a professional laboratory environment meant. And over the course of my undergraduate period, learn more and more about drug safety testing, what it takes to put products on the market. And following graduation with my bachelor's in science, I really had a thirst to learn more and more about our industry. How do we get medicines to patients? And everything that goes along with that, from R&D to manufacturing and ultimately commercialization. So over the course of my 9-year career at Covance, I would network heavily, seek to understand not only what my own role was, but what peers in adjacent functions, what their role was, again, with the goal of connecting the dots. And during my career at Covance, I earned my master's in business administration. And following that experience, really wanted to get into more of a broader strategic role within an organization. And circumstantially, Amgen was looking for someone with my skill set. So I moved from the Washington, D.C. area out to sunny Southern California. I knew nothing about procurement when I joined Amgen. I knew that procurement was important to the organization. As a former scientist, procurement was essential to getting me the materials I needed to run my laboratory. So given my scientific background and then business education, I built a procurement career in early R&D, really the research portion of the organization. And again, similar to my role at Covance, very inquisitive, seldom said no, and gained a lot of experiences through networking, through that inquisitive nature, and supported most areas of R&D in my time at Amgen. Went back into R&D as a business unit leader at Amgen, having had a perspective on the supplier side, again, from Covance, having the business perspective and procurement, really created that trifecta in an operational leadership role in Amgen R&D, only to find BMS also found value in my skills and was successful in recruiting me over in early 2015, and have really enjoyed an exciting, albeit very challenging, role in procurement as an executive leader here at BMS over the last almost 9 years now.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a great journey, and I'll pick up on a couple sort of more points of that. I mean, when you talked about obviously your chemistry background, and then also the business qualifications on top of that, which obviously is an important step, and also the inquisitive nature, wanting to find out more, committed to networking, which is, in my view, super important in business roles. How important, though, has the background in biochemistry been to the roles that you're doing now?
Yeah, so with some groups, it's very important you have that scientific background, someone that can relate to the work that they do. I've always been careful and have always, reinforced this with my own procurement teams. Though many of us have scientific backgrounds, we are not the scientific experts, whether at Bristol Myers Squibb or at Amgen or anywhere else. Rather, to your point, that biochemistry background has been important to understand context. Having been a scientist in a working laboratory, I can appreciate the challenges and the needs of our scientific teams. And that helps create more efficient and, I would say, productive conversations with our scientific staff, especially when you've walked maybe not a whole mile, but at least walked a few feet in their shoes.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. What about, really interested in the specifics around R&D procurement. How have you changed the operating model at BMS around R&D procurement? What does that look like?
Yeah, let's say the changes have been multifactorial. So when I joined the organization in 2015, our focus was predominantly small and large molecule oncology. Yes, Bristol Myers Squibb has a non-oncology portfolio. And again, speaking back to the 2015 period. But in 2019, when Bristol Myers Squibb acquired the Celgene Corporation, it was really a sea change in one, not only how we think about procurement, but how we enable, as you say, critical business units like R&D. So the organization got much larger. As a result, my R&D procurement organization got much larger to meet the breadth of what are nearly 9,000 scientists that we enable worldwide. But the approach that BMS has taken since the Celgene acquisition is what I would consider to be a leading operating model in R&D. One that is very focused on speed, getting as many medicines to as many patients as fast as we can. We have a much more diverse portfolio, therapeutic and from a modality perspective. We have also built new capabilities as science evolves, which it does on an ever ongoing basis. Our procurement organization has had to evolve and adapt to be able to enable these new capabilities. For example, a burgeoning in silico research capability, which is certainly a hot topic within our industry today.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about how we've changed the operating model, aside from your typical boxes, strings, this person does that, what we've really focused on are driving the right behaviors. So a mindset that is focused on high quality, one that is focused on urgency. But most importantly, when I think about our procurement professionals at BMS, it's about accountability. It's about owning your space. It's about owning your space in a way that you understand what our stakeholders need, what the external market, how it's organized, how it's changing, how external forces that are either headwinds or tailwinds to the broader enterprise, how those are impacting our strategies. and maturing an organization to be one of thought partners with our business, thinking and brainstorming and ultimately implementing solutions that extend beyond the conventional scope of a procurement organization. Thinking about business challenges that may have nothing to do with third parties. And that is also what I would consider to be kind of the breeding grounds of an innovative team. And back to BMS's acquisition of Celgene four plus years ago now, there's been an increased focus on enabling innovation. It is not uncommon in our industry, certainly within the procurement practice, that lower dollar value or perceived less important transactions do not get the attention they need. However, we've come to recognize and appreciate that many times these bespoke or niche opportunities are really the future of the R&D organization. They bring a critical differentiating capability. And I have worked with my leaders, worked with not only in procurement, but within R&D itself, to design an operating model that we can not only focus on high volume, high risk, high visibility opportunities, but also have folks with unique skill sets that can drive an innovation portfolio. And that has been something that we've been very successful in implementing in the past several years. And I think it is a source of differentiation for the corporation.
Yeah. On the behaviors and the values that you talk about, I mean, all of them very, very admirable. How have you done that? Some of those, you think about enabling innovation, accountability, urgency, and high quality, not always easy to go together, right? I mean, how have you done that?
It's about a one team mindset.
Yeah.
It's about challenging one another. It's not my space versus the next person's space or the next one, thinking in, discrete categorical buckets or functional buckets. But we're all stewards of the organization. We all have our own personal stories and ties back to serving patients. And I have to say, one of the things that I really admire about Bristol Myers Squibb is the focus on patients. And everything that we do, and I say that with conviction, rallies around serving patients. Patients that we can meet their need today, or solving complex disease challenges to serve patients in the future. And it's ingraining that patient-first mindset, forgetting which function you're in or how much spend you manage or what your title is. It's that one team mentality. We're all in it together. And why are we doing what we're doing every day? That is really what's helped rally an organization to be what it is.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of what happened in 2019 with the acquisition, the organization got much larger, and obviously it really did require a different view on R&D procurement. In terms of the outputs that have come from that, how's that been impacted?
It's interesting too, or some of our members of our management team recently held what we call an R&D day for investors, where they talked about how are we building a world-class pipeline? What are the nature of the therapeutics within that pipeline? How are we improving productivity? How are we improving the efficacy of drugs in our early pipeline? And then to your point, and back to the company's mission of more medicines to more patients faster, how do we reduce our development cycle times while also delivering high quality medicines to our patients, right? So this has been a lot of process reengineering, both internally and with our partners. But it's also been tapping capabilities that exist within the supply market that perhaps we have not made a direct investment in, but rather are taking advantage of those through third parties. And again, back to a procurement organization that's focused on innovation and driving urgency in our pipeline. Procurement has played a very important role sitting at the table with our stakeholders to bring those new capabilities to our enterprise.
Yeah, from what you've said, I think you can really see in enabling these very big changes to a R&D procurement organization, aligning that with the mission and the direction of the business, more medicines to more patients, etc., and the whole one team policy is very powerful. How do you approach working with 9,000 scientists, right? Okay, so you're from a science background, that would give you a head start for sure, but how does this work? What doesn't work? What does that look like?
Look, within procurement, we are the experts in the external marketplace, and our role is to enable our business through optimized third-party solutions. In the same regard, I have a very, I would say, relatively limited sized organization to serve 9,000 people.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that, and we're still on this journey, Chris, is self-service. So how can we enable our scientists to get what they want, to buy off existing vetted strategies with existing vetted suppliers? So I'll give you a very simple example. Take lab consumables. We buy hundreds of thousands of transactions of lab materials every year to meet the needs of the scientists around our corporation. I don't have the resources to directly manage each transaction. So we enable inventory centers. We have strategic partnerships with the likes of Thermo Fisher Scientific and many others who can help us manage and distribute a complex supply chain. And in those situations, again, everything has already been set up by procurement in partnership with finance and IT and R&D, so that if our scientists need a material for their experiment, they don't have to come to procurement. They can go into an intranet site, they can buy what they need to buy, and it's almost some folks call it like an Amazon BMS Prime is what some folks call it. Hopefully I won't get in trouble here with Amazon on that. But, it's, you go in, you order what you need to order, and it shows up on your lab bench a couple of days later.
Yeah.
And it's those types of self-service solutions that allow us to focus our resources on more complex, higher risk propositions for the organization. And we're organized with key groups within the R&D business, again, to drive not only global strategies, but then to tailor global strategies to the needs of individual markets or individual locales as it's needed. There's never a shortage for work, I'll say that. One of the things I absolutely love about R&D is we have very creative scientists that come up with very creative opportunities or challenging opportunities. And I think that's also one of the things that really drives, the organization is every day is different. Every challenge is a little bit unique. And it's that variation and the complexity of some of these challenges that really motivate us day to day.
And I think, the self-service model is a very interesting one. It really talks, I think, to the importance of the strategic relationships with suppliers as well, right? Where you can obviously really kind of build that in, and you can get that element where you don't have to be involved in every transaction. It's a really smart model. How are you building computer-aided research into your team, into processes, and what difference has that made to research and R&D, et cetera? Any data points you can share there would be super helpful.
Technology has played a role for many decades in enabling research capabilities within our industry. But over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years, in my opinion, the pace of change And the magnitude of change and the capabilities technology is bringing to the research areas, for example, of the life sciences industry are not only exciting, but they're very complex and they require a lot of cross-functional collaboration within the organization. So again, our mission being more patients or more medicines to more patients faster. One of that is improving the speed and the efficacy of research assets that we can put into the clinic. And BMS is making a lot of investment into what I would call an in silico research capability. It's allowing us to arm our scientists with more data, with higher compute functionality so that they can interrogate that data with greater speed and better outcomes. And that ultimately is allowing us to have molecules coming out of research that have a higher probability of success in the clinic and ultimately with regulatory agencies. And when you have a more efficient research pipeline, the entire portfolio and patients benefit from that.
I think that's very clear to see just how important and what a knock-on, if a positive knock-on impact that can have.
What I would just say to that is as an industry, we do not have, this computer-aided research. It's not a one and done. So it's still very much an evolving landscape. And it's very exciting. I mean, I get probably 5 to 10 companies a day that are hitting my inbox with, these types of capabilities, and being able to sift through them, identify ones that best align with our corporate objectives and our research needs. That's one of the bigger challenges today, is just finding those optimal fits and then driving them forward with urgency.
Yeah. And that's also an interesting comparison with the previous conversation around self-service, right? Where you're talking about, in relative terms, the procurement team is small compared to a team of 9,000 scientists. So the self-service model is very important. And obviously the strategic relationship with suppliers is very important. But clearly there are still many areas where there is a huge thirst and need for innovation, and actually where that new supplier base is still going to be hugely important, right?
That's absolutely right.
What advice would you have for others looking to make or advance a career in procurement, particularly in this part of procurement?
So if you had asked me the question 15 years ago, I would say specifically in R&D procurement, it's essential you have a scientific background. I don't say that anymore because I don't believe that that is a key to success. As I think about, procurement professionals, maybe it's individuals within my own organization that want to grow within the procurement profession, I think there's a couple of key attributes someone needs. One, accountability. I am very, very big on accountability. As a procurement function, you are a thought partner with the business, bringing external perspectives. And being able to own that and bring those insights with confidence and to bring that value is absolutely essential. I think it's also very important, and I've seen this in my career, where procurement professionals may show up to a conversation or may try to push on a stakeholder a particular solution before they understand the opportunity. And I think it's important that you stay objective, you stay open-minded, because what you think may be the solution is not necessarily the best one yielding the best outcomes. Be inquisitive, right? So that is something that I have done my entire career, is ask questions, seek to understand. 20 plus years in the industry, there is far more that I don't know than I do know. And not to be cliche, but it goes back to every day you should learn something new. Working with 9,000 stakeholders and thousands of suppliers at any given period of time, I would be hard pressed not to learn something new every day.
Yeah.
And then lastly, open-mindedness. Organizations change, enabling functions, groups like a procurement organization that enable the business to be more efficient and more effective. Being open to change and understanding how the business is changing or how the supply market is changing, I think are absolutely essential.
And to the view 15 years ago, which would have been a science background is essential, has that view gradually evolved over 15 years, or was there a point at which you thought, actually, I'm not so sure? It's an interesting dynamic, right?
It is. I mean, when I was much younger and my beard wasn't gray, I thought I knew everything. And it's amazing as you mature personally and professionally. You'll look back on perspectives and decisions you've made. And I think the reason, Chris, I had that particular perspective on you need a science background is because it worked for me. I knew the science. I shared a common language with my R&D partners. But as I've matured as a procurement professional and been exposed to individuals that do not have a scientific background, and quite frankly are just as successful, just as impactful as those that do, that is really over time what has changed my perspective. And I'm really glad that's happened. And I think I'm a better leader because of it.
It's also, I would say, great for the industry, right? Is that you've got a nice balance of people that have got this science background, but presumably it must open up the industry to a lot more talent that may come from completely different industries that don't necessarily have that background.
Without question. I'm a big proponent of the inclusion of diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And it's diversity of perspectives and experiences that have a proven track record of better outcomes and greater value to an organization versus, for example, I can only hire scientists because only they can understand the needs of the business. That's just not true anymore.
Yeah. The qualities you talk about, which I think are very recognizable, accountability, being inquisitive, being open-minded. Is there anything that you believe is particularly relevant to the R&D procurement side of the industry that wouldn't necessarily be as important, or is that very transferable across pharma and life sciences?
I think the focus on innovation, which, that goes, in my mind, that goes part and parcel to being open-minded. An innovative mindset, you have to have that when you're working with R&D, because what are one of the cores of any R&D organization is to innovate, right?
Yeah.
It's one of their core principles. And if you have a procurement organization that's not innovative, not open to doing new things, you marginalize your contribution to the organization. And I'm not saying for those out there that are not in R&D procurement or not in an R&D function, I am not saying you're not innovative or that you can't be. I'm just saying I have experienced it to be very, very important, in particular in R&D, but clearly an innovative mindset adds value regardless of which group or function you support.
If you look forward to 2024, which is literally just around the corner now, and 25 and 26, what do you see as the big challenges, the big hurdles, but also the big opportunities that lay ahead?
Yeah, I to put it the most simply, Chris, and we just had a procurement town hall yesterday, where the number one priority is keeping close with our stakeholders and keeping close with our supply base to, again, one of the core values procurement can bring to any business unit is helping that business unit and ultimately the organization look around the corners. anticipate and plan for things that have not happened yet. That is a strategic and proactive sourcing organization versus one that is just taking orders, go execute this contract, or go negotiate a lower price. Those are also important things, but they're less strategic in nature. And as I talk with the organization going into 24 and 25, which will continue to be or continues to be a challenging environment, not only for Bristol Myers Squibb, but for the life sciences industry more wholly, is helping the business identify partners, ways of working, and solutions that drive efficiency, that drive better outcomes in our portfolio, and bring new and innovative capabilities as a competitive differentiator for us.
And I can really hear the passion you have for what you do. Maybe you could just share a couple of thoughts about what does working in life sciences, in R&D, in this role mean to you personally? I mean, I think we can really hear the point from a BMS perspective about more medicines to more people. It's very powerful, and it sounds very much like that's the case for you personally as well.
It was. Chris, will rewind 19 years, actually. And I was at Covance, still as a very young professional, and got a really heartbreaking phone call one day that my mother had a seizure, and I needed to come to the hospital right away, which was about a 3-hour drive. And by the time I got there, we learned that she'd been diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer, which is just an absolutely horrific disease. And going through about 6 weeks of hell, if I could just be honest, caring for her, getting feedback that, every time we met with a doctor, it felt like she had less and less time. And that unfortunately proved to be reality. And, leveraging my scientific background, working for the 3 fantastic organizations that we've referenced in this call, there's a personal aspect to my professional career. Thinking back to what happened with my own family, unfortunately, we live in a world where many families not only may deal specifically with non-small cell lung cancer or another form of cancer or other debilitating or life-threatening diseases. And this is why it's been such a gratifying and fulfilling career at BMS, knowing the corporation, again, is so focused on patients. And we talk every day at work about the work we're doing is providing life-saving medicines to families that are in need. And every day that we can provide patients the medicines that we've helped deliver or invent new medicines for patients that have an unmet need, that rings home personally. And it's my hope that we can continue to lessen the number of families that have to go through these very difficult healthcare crises.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a very poignant story and one that means a lot to you, obviously. I think it does also talk to the power and the value of having a role that has real purpose, right? In an industry, in a business that really has a huge amount to give in terms of the difference it can make to people. So it's very powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your learnings over a 20-odd year career. And thanks very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. This was a lot of fun, and appreciate the opportunity to share some of my perspectives and experiences with you and your audience.